Some huge fight announcements have been made, and I'm going to give my reaction to all of them in today's video. We've got Holloway versus Poirier 3 in the main event of a pay-per-view on the 19th of July with the BMF belt on the line as well. I'll get to that in a second. We've also got Usman versus Buckley as the main event of UFC Fight Night Atlanta on June the 14th. This one's actually pretty soon, so I'm really looking forward to that. We all kind of knew it was going to happen. However, it's good to actually get that announcement. We've also got a few others as well that I thought I'd include at the end of this video. We got Rafael Fiziev versus Ignacio Bahamondes at UFC Baku in Azerbaijan. You've got to have Fiziev in Azerbaijan, so I'm so glad they got this matchup done. And they've got Mateusz Gamrot versus Ludovic Klein. People forget, man. Ludovic Klein's a marauder. Either way, we got to move on to the first fight, the biggest fight of all. Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier 3. We knew this was going down. If you've got your ear to the streets in the MMA world, you had some kind of idea that this one was sort of the one that was being talked about. Poirier said that he already had a fight signed, and if you looked through the rankings, you could kind of tell, okay, there isn't really going to be anyone ready for it other than Max Holloway, and I doubt they're going to do Armand Sarukian versus Dustin Poirier, or, Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker too, even though that would have been a really good fight. So he got the trilogy. I'm confused by it, but you know what? I'm just going to try and be happy. I'm happy. This is a big fight. This is going to be a big pay-per-view. With the right undercard. With this type of fight, you can't have title fights underneath it. That's what a BMF belt does to a card. You can't have an undisputed championship bout as the undercard of a BMF title. You just can't do it. So you've got to have some contenders on the undercard. So this is the type of card when you can bring back a Gene Silva, when you can put a Dominic Reyes in there against an Alexander Rakic and do a Gene Silva versus a Brian Ortega or a Lerone Murphy or even a Yair Rodriguez or something along those lines. Probably not that. I hope they do Yair versus Diego Lopez. I don't understand this from Dustin Poirier's point of view. I really don't. I don't know if I'm alone on that. I hope I'm not. But I'm really confused by this from Dustin Poirier's point of view. I like the fight. It's going to be a sick fight. And I'm going to be amped up to watch it one more time. And I do understand that, I think Poirier was Holloway's first fight in the UFC. And now they've also got, this guy's even saying it here, Dustin was Max's first fight in the UFC and Max will be Dustin's last. So much has changed since their second fight. I kind of understand it from the perspective of Holloway and Poirier were such babies in the sport and were so new to the sport when they first fought each other that this can be kind of just seen as a rematch in their actual form of themselves, where Poirier's as good as he is and Holloway's as good as he is. They fought each other the second time, and you can maybe consider that the first. I just don't know why Poirier would want to do this at the end of his career when he's sort of in this situation where, you're 2-0 against Holloway. Why would you want to risk it potentially being 2-1? Why wouldn't you want to add a new name to that resume or test yourself against a new up-and-comer or a new superstar? I understand it, though. He wants another legend. He just wants someone that he respects, I imagine. And they're going to do this favor for him. Another thing to note about this as well, New Orleans, Louisiana. I know Dustin Poirier's from Lafayette, but this is Louisiana main event pay-per-view for Dustin Poirier. So I think Poirier, when he heard that they're going to do a pay-per-view in Louisiana, and it's going to be, a massive matchup built around him, he just sort of went, you know what, I'll take anyone they're going to give me here. If it's Holloway, that's a big name, cool, I'll take it. So I think he wasn't really in a position to bargain too much because he already realized what they did for him when it came to the fact that they're doing this in his home state. They never go to Louisiana, and they got to do it for Poirier's retirement. Would this be sad if Holloway goes out there and beats him? Yes. Am I potentially picking Max Holloway to beat Dustin Poirier here in the last fight of his career? Also, yes. But you know what? I'm going to enjoy it. I think that's the main thing. I fucking hate the BMF belt! I hate the BMF belt. I really don't like the BMF belt. I think it's a fucking joke. Holloway's got it over his shoulder. And listen, I know Holloway recently mentioned, that he's cool with me. But I do find the BMF belt thing so dumb. It's childish to me. I love the matchup. I'm going to enjoy the card. I'm actually really looking forward to this because what this is good for is it saves championship bouts for June and August and September. So we're going to get better stacked cards outside of this, and this can carry a card on its own. This can carry a fight week. Everyone's going to be tuning into this one. All the casuals are going to be like, dude, it's Holloway Poirier. We've got to be there for this. So it does save undisputed championship bouts for other cards. So we're going to get some triple headers. We're going to get some main, co-main, and feature fight title fights around this event because this is going to, you know, make the rest of the card void of them. I just don't like the BMF belt. I almost see this as Ilya's arm, you know? I almost see this as Bilal Muhammad's shoulders that this is over. You know, I just don't like the fact that it isn't lineal. If it is going to be a belt that's in the sport, it should go to the guy who beat the guy who, you know. But I understand they're just sort of doing this because I think they need to have a title on the line in a main event. And it's like a good loophole for the UFC. I know they did this for Masvidal versus Diaz way back when. I know that was what they were going for. They didn't have a title fight for that card. They knew they were going to be competing with Canelo, and they need a title fight in the main event. I'm pretty sure that's a part of their ESPN deal. Like, we need a title fight at the top of the marquee, at least. So this is sort of their loophole where they can put some big names in the main event and justify it with a BMF belt on the line. This is the main event now. I know they did it UFC 300. They had Holloway and Gaethje. And the main event was Pereira versus Hill. So there's going to be no titles underneath this. But I'm thinking Gene Silva on the card against another featherweight. This is going to be a really good spotlight for him. Maybe another lightweight matchup as well. I don't know, maybe you could get a Moicano on this card versus someone. I don't know who he's going to be against. Maybe they could even just do a Moicano versus Dan Hooker if they're not going to do any of the other matchups. I think we're actually nearing a Makhachev versus Topuria matchup being made. So, I don't know. I'm looking forward to this, man. I'm going to just enjoy it. I know it doesn't really make sense. I know Poirier's up 2-0 against him, but with the right fights on the undercard, this could be a really fun night of fights. Dominic Reyes. Let me scan through my head for some other people that could be pretty good for this card. You could get like a Volkov matchup on this card, like an Alexander Volkov, Jailton Almeida on the main card of this pay-per-view. You could even do, who's another fun matchup that's unranked? Is Peter Yan got a fight yet? I don't think Peter Yan's got a fight. Maybe you could put a Peter Yan versus Rob Font on this card. Like, you could sneak in some pretty, because they're not going to do Umar versus Yan as the main event of UFC Fight Night Abu Dhabi in July. You could put that on the main card here. You could sneak in some of those guys that are really great and deserve their own spotlight, but maybe would get overshone and outshined by some title fights up the card. This is where you can have a real statement. Here's some solid names that are ranked, not champions, but they bring the same value as certain champions on this card. So you could have a really solid main card with all those names I just mentioned. You could also do a Rachmanov versus Brady as like a co-main event of this card with a Gene Silva, Lerone Murphy feature fight, with maybe a Peter Yan versus Rob Font feature fight, and then a Gene Silva versus a Lerone Murphy opens up the main card, and then a Dominic Reyes versus an Alexander Rakic on the fourth fight on the main card. That's just off the top of the dome, and that's a really good 5-fight main card for it. So I'm going to go with Max Holloway. But I really like this. I'm going to enjoy it. I think a lot of people might want me to rage about this, and I don't understand it, but they're legends. I just need to start enjoying the sport when we do get some big fights. So I'm going to change my mind and not complain about everything, because there's more stuff to be happy about. We've got Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. A massive matchup in the welterweight division. Really looking forward to this. I knew it was going to happen. We all kind of knew it was going to happen. I've got a stubborn bogey in my nose that I just got rid of. We all kind of knew this was going to happen. But I'm glad it's done. We needed a main event for UFC Fight Night Atlanta. And I'm just going to say it. This is the type of main event that you kind of need in a UFC Fight Night Atlanta. You need a Kamaru Usman versus a Joaquin Buckley. You need these type of Americans out there taking each other on in the main event of UFC Fight Night Atlanta. You can't have a UFC Fight Night Atlanta with a Chase Hooper versus you just can't do that. You got to have an Usman Buckley, okay? This is what's got to happen. This is the perfect marketplace for it. It's a perfect event for them. It's a nice spotlight for Joaquin Buckley, should I say. So this is great. This is great. I think if Joaquin Buckley has a statement performance here, which I think he's going to have, by the way. I don't know if anyone else feels that, but I feel it. Joaquin Buckley's going to go out there and put a whooping on Usman. I do think that. I think Usman's past it, man. And someone said here, one oblique kick and it's over. Dude, Usman's knees are cooked. So I'm going to go with Buckley. And this is a great resume that Buckley's building up. Listen, Ian Gary, I just got done making a video about him talking about how Buckley's not... who the fuck is Buckley? Trust me, if Buckley goes out there and fucks up Usman and finishes him in the main event of a UFC Fight Night Atlanta... there's no more who the fuck is Buckley. He's going to be above Ian Gary in terms of the pecking order for a title shot. So, I'm just saying, Ian Gary's going to have to start recognizing who Buckley is real soon if he does go out there and get this win. And I'm also going to say this. Love the matchup. The card's pretty weak underneath it, so it needed a main event like this. I think the co-main event is like Rose Namajunas versus someone. Maybe Natalia Silva. I can't even remember who the co-main event is. But there's some weak fights on this card. I think they've got Alonzo Menifield versus Anumar Sai. There's a lot of weakness on the card, to say the least. So we're maybe going to get another decent co-main event here as well, or a good feature fight. But Usman versus Buckley. I think Buckley is a hidden star of the UFC. I really do. I think there is, and a lot of people don't like talking about this because they're worried about how it might come across. But I said it earlier when it came to the market that UFC Atlanta has. Maybe I'm just basing this off of TV shows I've seen about Atlanta and things like this. But I think Buckley, this is the perfect opportunity for him. Against Usman, in Atlanta, an American Fight Night main event for Joaquin Buckley. And I'm just going to say it. He needs to capture the Black American audience of combat sports. They don't have a guy right now. They really don't have a guy. If you look at flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, they're not there, you know? Buckley is sort of like, he's got to lead the charge here. You know what I mean? He's got to like Jamal Hill had it a bit, but then he's had a bit of mixed results recently in his career. At middleweight, it was Adesanya, but Adesanya's from New Zealand, you know? He's an anime guy, so it does capture a certain type of that audience, but they need to capture the Gervonta Davis audience, you know? The audience that's rallying behind Terence Crawford. They need to rally the hood behind some fighter in the UFC. And that fighter's Joaquin Buckley. That's absolutely true. They've got John Jones. But as of right now, I mean, do they want John Jones representing them right now? He's great, you know? They can root for him. They can cheer for him. I see him in the comments still saying, who the fuck is Aspinall? Dude, Jones don't have to prove anything. They're still going to be around supporting John Jones. But we know Jones ain't going to be here forever. So as much as it's like difficult to say, that's a super... like if that audience rallies behind Joaquin Buckley, he's going to be a superstar. And not just that. If you're just a fight fan in general, aside from that, you're amped up to see Joaquin Buckley fight. He's been on a streak. You know what I mean? He has fun fights every single time. He knocked out Wonder Boy. He fucked up Colby Covington. You know what I mean? Even though Colby took him down in round 2, and maybe we can talk about when Buckley comes up against another grappler. That's going to be a conversation that gets had. He messed up Colby Covington pretty easily, as I predicted. And then he slept Wonder Boy, as I predicted, as well. I called a 3rd round TKO. Joaquin Buckley is sneakily... like, even though he doesn't get discussed because there isn't this big drama around Joaquin Buckley outside of the cage, he's just low-key been fucking up the division. And if he fucks up Usman, he's going to be undeniable as like a new top contender that's going to be in position to either get a fight that gets him a title shot, or depending on the way the matchups go at the top of the welterweight division. I mean, I'd like to see if Buckley wins this and Ian Gary wins his next fight. Another Fight Night main event, Ian Gary versus Joaquin Buckley. That's how they earn their title shot. So, I like Usman versus Buckley. I think this is a sick fight. I'm glad that Buckley got the opportunity. And also respect to Usman for stepping back in there. It's been a long time. I know he's not in his prime, to say the least, but I still think that Usman wouldn't step in there unless he was feeling somewhat like himself. If Usman knew he was done, I don't think he would risk legacy by stepping back in there. And also, to say that Usman isn't in his prime anymore, in his last outing, he took Khamzat Chimaev to a decision that arguably should have been scored a draw or a win to Usman at least, on short notice at middleweight. So maybe we shouldn't be saying that Usman's past his prime, because if he is, then Chimaev should be fucking ashamed of himself. So this is going to be a potential real statement for Buckley. And I'm really looking forward to this main event. And it's coming up soon as well. We've got 2 more matchups here. Rafael Fiziev versus Ignacio Bahamondes. Love this fight. Love this fight. The main event is Jamahal Hill versus Nikita Krylov. Or no. I'm obsessed with Nikita Krylov, guys. The main event is Jamahal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. That's the main event, which is interesting to have as a main event. I thought that would be the main event of UFC Fight Night Atlanta, okay? But clearly the UFC had this in the works, so they kind of knew, okay, we're not going to put it there. We have Usman Buckley as a card to play. So instead, we're going to do that in somewhere else. They could have put it on this card, on the main card of this July event, but they needed a main event. And I get Fiziev Bahamondes can't be a main event. The only reason I'm saying I'm glad that this has been made, Fiziev's from Azerbaijan. I think he's the only fighter. I mean, I can't think about UFC fighters in UFC history that are out of Azerbaijan. So this is their guy. They needed this. Like, Fiziev needed to step up for this. I do worry that he's taking this fight against a dangerous contender in Ignacio Bahamondes on such short turnaround after a bit of a beatdown against Justin Gaethje again. You know, it always seems to get bad for Fiziev in the third. He got dropped in the second round with the uppercut. He pulled a bit of a Chandler there. So although he took a lot of damage, I think I'm going to have to go with Ignacio Bahamondes. Fiziev took a lot of damage, and therefore I'm going to definitely lean towards Ignacio Bahamondes. He's a long, rangy striker. They've typically given Fiziev some problems. I like Fiziev against people that are his build, that maybe want to take him down. He's like a good counter grappler in ways, and he can like find shots on those guys. But, you know, if they can out durability him like a Gaethje, they can give him problems. And maybe it was because of the training camp, who knows. But I don't see Fiziev having an option to take Bahamondes to the ground. We saw how dangerous Bahamondes was off of his back in his last fight against Jalen Turner. But I love this as a co-main event. And now the UFC Fight Night Baku card is good. I'm in a good mood about these fights. I just need a little bit of help for Usman versus Buckley. I need a little bit of help for this event. This sells the card. But I need a sneaky, what's a matchup that can be made? I need a June 14th. What can be made soon in the UFC that would be a decent co-main event or feature fight? It just needs one other bout on this card. What the fuck is Marcus McGee doing? You know what I mean? Like something like that, where it's like real ones know that's an interesting fight that you're going to have to look forward to. Who else is there right now in the UFC that could get this matchup? Like, get a Jacoby on the card. I can't even think about who's got matchups right now in the UFC. Vettori was looking for a quick turnaround. Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Sneak it on, you know? Sneak that type of fight on this card as well. But, oh no, Brendan Allen's going to be on the fucking Louisiana card. Of course he is. Of course Brendan Allen's going to be on there against Marvin Vettori. I'm glad I thought about that. Brendan Allen, Marvin Vettori. Put it on this card, and that gives me a spare, which I can now take off the main card. I can take off a Peter Yan versus a Rob Font for a matchup on here, or I can take off an Alexander Rakic versus Dominic Reyes. Get Reyes on here. You know, get these guys on, these guys who got quick finishes and took no damage. Get them back in there, dude. Keep the momentum going. And let's have some really good fight cards coming up soon. Other than that, we've got this fight as well. Mateusz Gamrot versus Ludovit Klein. Ludovit Klein's really good. I don't think he's going to beat Gamrot. He could do, but I think Gamrot's especially underrated. And I could see Ludovit Klein losing this one. People that put pace on Klein seem to do quite well. And although Klein's really good and he looks amazing in moments, the overall result of his fights aren't always the most dominant. You know, he's had amazing moments, and he's a bit like a Nathaniel Wood, if you know what I'm saying. When you look at his highlight reel, you think, oh, this guy's the best guy in their division. You know, nobody's putting together combinations like this. Nobody's piecing guys up like this. But then when you see that highlight reel cut short before you see a referee jump in, you realize, oh, wait, he didn't get a finish there. And then the next 2 rounds were very close, you know? Klein's very good, though. Klein's very good. They're doing Gamrot dirty with this matchup, but I'm glad that Gamrot's stepping up to take it. This is on the May 31st card, so this is also in very short time. We're getting these announcements very close to the events. I think the UFC, whether you like it or not, I think us as fans have really done a good job pressuring these motherfuckers to actually improve these cards. We're seeing announcements, You know, not that far out. June 14th. Not that far away for an Usman Buckley announcement. You'd think we would have got that a few weeks ago. So we're getting these announcements now. UFC Baku in June 21st. That's 4 weeks away. Just over 4 weeks away. This is 5 weeks away. I'm completely off on this. This is 8 weeks away. This is 5 weeks away. So they're scurrying to appease right now is what I'm seeing here. And if they can put a good undercard here as well, I'm looking forward to it. This, I believe, is now the co-main event, I would imagine. I think it's a Blanchfield versus a Macy Barber card in the Apex, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm glad there's something of interest there. Even though Blanchfield versus Barber is going to be an interesting fight, it does need a lot of good undercard fights to justify its existence as a main. You know what I mean? You've got to like, how do I counterbalance the fact that you've put them in the main event with at least some interest on the rest of the card as well, if you know what I'm saying. So really looking forward to all these fights. Hopefully I painted a good image of the potential undercards here. So if I was going to build a Holloway versus Poirier 3 card, I've forgotten, but I said it in the video. I've completely forgotten. But you know the deal. You know what I mean? You know the deal. Maybe a Shavkat Rakhmonov versus a Sean Brady co-main event. Maybe you do a feature fight of a Piotr Yan versus a Rob Font. Open up the main card with a Gene Silva versus a Lerone Murphy. That'd be an amazing way to open the card. And then fourth fight on the card, in between all of it, you do Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Bad blood. Bunch of interesting fights with stories behind them and stars on them in one side of the fight or the other. And like hype on all of the fights up and down the card without a title fight necessary or needed. That way you can save title fights for other cards. And then maybe you can put Dominic Reyes on this one. I'd like Reyes to get back in there. Quick KO, no damage taken. Keep the ball rolling. Fight Rakic on the undercard of this. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Yeah. I hope you understood what I meant about Buckley and the audience that he could accomplish. Like it's the Gervonta Davis audience. It is. Like, that's just it. They need someone like that in the UFC for black Americans to get behind. And I think Buckley is the right person for that to be. So, see you later, guys. Goodbye. And I think Buckley wins this fight and has an all-time performance and pieces up Usman. I really do. Goodbye.